What's up, everybody? I am Jason C. Welcome back to the Mashanddrum Whiskey Room. It's really nice to be back. Thanks again for everyone's support the last week or so. But we are back to whiskey, and I'm happy because today we are talking about one of the most interesting and rock and roll distilleries in whiskey today. It's Chattanooga Whiskey. They're crafting unique whiskeys using interesting mash bills. They have my attention. They have an amazing story. So let's dive in today on the Mashanddrum. All right, so for those of you out there like me that appreciate, a really good story behind a whiskey, you're gonna really appreciate the story. So in 2011, Chattanooga Whiskey became the first legal distillery in Chattanooga in over 100 years. So that's right. Now, between 1860 and 1900, believe it or not, Chattanooga, Tennessee was a North American distilling hub with over 30 distilleries and 98 liquor dealers that were in establishment. Unfortunately, in 1909, Prohibition in Tennessee began a full 10 years prior to the national prohibition, and this distilling hub was shut down. Now, by 1915, the laws became increasingly strict, and many distilleries that remained were shut down indefinitely. Of course, that didn't stop some trying to continue to sell their whiskey, including the Chattanooga Police Commissioner at the time, along with the local distiller, who were caught smuggling whiskey out of state in coffins. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So December 5th, 1933, Prohibition ends, and during that post-national prohibition, only 3 counties were allowed to distill spirits in Tennessee, and that's Lincoln, Moore, and the Coffee counties. Now, this does not include Hamilton County, where Chattanooga is located. So even in 2009, after the Great Recession, Tennessee lawmakers voted 57-26 in favor of expanding spirits production to 41 additional Tennessee counties, and this overall expansion helped launch the craft distilling movement in Tennessee. But that still did not include Hamilton County, where Chattanooga is. Enter Tim Pearson and Joe Ledbetter. So this is where the story gets a little bit rock and roll. So Tim Pearson and Joe Ledbetter began researching Chattanooga distilling laws and formulated a plan to bring whiskey back to Hamilton County. By October 2011, the Would You Drink Chattanooga Whiskey campaign appeared on social media to galvanize some community support, and the community response was absolutely overwhelming. So overwhelming, in fact, that Tim Pearson and Joe Ledbetter founded the Chattanooga Whiskey Company and announced their goals to help change Chattanooga distilling laws. Wait, so they founded a company in 2011 in a city that wasn't allowed to distill anything? Doesn't sound like the greatest business plan, but I gotta say, that takes guts and pure passion for what you do. So like a lot of new distilleries, they sourced from LDL at the time, which is now MGP, 3-year-old whiskey. They found some money and bought 20 barrels, packaged it, and bottled it to honor Chattanooga and the history. They launched it in 2012, but to be fully transparent, which we all appreciate, they had to let people know that this is Chattanooga whiskey that was distilled in Indiana, and that was a tough sell, but they still had the back of the community of what their distillery and vision could be. So as time went on, Tim and Joe continued their efforts to change the laws to the local government with substantial community support behind them. Commission voted 7-0 to adopt a non-binding resolution to the Tennessee General Assembly requesting the state law to be amended. In 2013, House Bill 102, nicknamed the Whiskey Bill, was introduced, and after a scare from some lobbyists in 2013, the Whiskey Bill passed with 57 House members in favor and was signed into law on May 16th, 2013. So in 2014, Chattanooga Whiskey began development on an experimental microdistillery on Market Street hired former brewer Grant McCracken as head distiller, and in 2015, whiskey production began at Experimental Distillery, the first time in 100 years. Just a fantastic story. All right, so today Chattanooga distills from a 45,000 square foot riverfront distillery, a facility with enough capacity to produce about 50 to 60 barrels a week. In 2017, Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental single batch series launched with Batch 001, a Tennessee high malt bourbon, the first aged whiskey release in Chattanooga in 102 years. So that led to their creation of their 1816 series of finish, Solara, barrel strength, and single barrel whiskey. Their experimental series uses different mash bills, uses different unique ingredients. But today we're going to try the Chattanooga 91 and the Chattanooga 111 cask series, which is their signature high malt bourbon whiskeys. All right, so first we're going to start with the 91. Now the 91 is named actually after the 91st barrel that they tried after experimenting with all sorts of malts and grains to nail what they were looking for. The 91 is 91 proof, has a mash bill of yellow corn, malted rye, caramel malted barley, and honey malted barley, aged in 2 different charred and toasted white oak barrels. Now after aging more than 2 years, this then goes through a Solara finishing process, bringing together nearly 100 barrels into a 4,000 gallon charred white oak Solara finishing barrel, which never goes empty. So this retails for about 35 bucks. It's 2 years plus, I believe. So it's a younger whiskey, but very impressive from what I tasted. As you can see, I did some damage to the 111 cask, and we're gonna get to that in a little bit. It was really the entire reason why I wanted to highlight Chattanooga, because I really think what's in this bottle is pretty special. So really interested to try this stuff. Let's go in for a sip. Here we go. Well, let's smell it first. Wow, you can definitely smell the malt right away. So being, 2 years plus, obviously it's not over the 4-year mark because, it's got that 2-year age statement, but this doesn't come across as something overly young on the nose. This smells like, I've talked about, Peerless before and Wilderness Trail, how those younger whiskeys could actually smell a little bit older than they are. I think the malt is definitely doing that a little bit here, giving it something unique. This is like honey iced tea. That's really what I smell in the nose. It's like basically honey iced tea. There's definitely some lemon peel in here. Yeah, this is coming off way more as a malt, like an American single malt almost. There are some really nice, the caramel and the honey characteristics that are in here are definitely punching through. But that malt spice and that malted character is really nice, really coming through on the nose. I love that sweet tea type flavor that I'm getting here on the nose. Let's go for a sip. Here we go. Wow, even the 91 proofer. So for me, I haven't had a lot to drink the last week or so, and my palate's very sensitive right now. So I'm just picking up a ton of like burnt toast, like orange marmalade, honey, a little bit of like baking spice there. There could be a little hint of cinnamon in there. Not overly spicy though. This is way more on the fruit and toast side. It's damn good, man. Go for another sip. Even at 91 proof, this is giving a little bit of a bite here. There's a little bit of a finish right on the back end. It's almost like the character of the mash bill just holds on enough to keep this interesting, especially on the finish. You worry, when you're used to drinking high proof bourbons, you worry that a 90 proofer or even, below, there won't be much of a finish on it. This one is bringing all like that burnt toast and getting like a crystallized ginger on the back end as well. Let's go for another sip. Still going along. Now I talk about consistency a lot with a whiskey from sip to sip. For a 91 proofer, this is really consistent. I mean, it's bringing the same experience with each sip. You're getting the honey, you're getting the orange, a little bit of the lemon peel, a little hint of cinnamon there. Yeah, it's like an orange or like a peach type flavor you get. Still getting like that honey iced tea aspect to it. That is a dangerous sipper because this, yeah, that's good. I thought I liked the 111 a lot, but the 91 is very impressive for the proof. One last sip of this one, guys. So on the nose, you could smell the malt, but on the palate, it's just sweet. I think the only malt aspect you really get on the palate is that burnt toast type flavor. Not like burnt, like I would say like if you like your toast like medium to, medium to heavy, like somewhere in between. It's not burnt, but it seems like it's a little bit more than medium toast. And then you add, some of that orange marmalade or peach marmalade or whatever you like to put on your toast. It's just, that's really good. Very impressive for a younger whiskey at 91 proof. That's a hitter. All right, so next is the 111. So as you guessed, it's 111 proof. Has a mash bill of yellow corn, malted rye, caramel malted barley, and honey malted barley, just like the 91. It's made from a single fermentation in small batches. It's unfiltered, bottled at barrel strength, and retails for about 50 bucks. Again, this is around the same age. We're looking at 2+ years old. Now, when I saw the mash bill, I was like, what the hell is honey malted barley? How does that work? So honey malt is basically made by cutting off the oxygen flow while the malt is sprouting. This allows the barley to actually self-stew within itself, and it gets a little bit more intense in sweetness, and you also lose some of those astringent and some of the bitter flavors that you get, from a standard barley that, a lot of bourbon drinkers don't like within Scotch. All right, so to the nose on this one. So again, this is 20 proof points higher than 91, so the malt flavor on the nose is definitely more amped up here. Wow, so this one is coming across way more caramel forward to me, whereas the 91 proof was more honey. There was some caramel behind it. The 111 is coming across more caramel with some honey behind it, I think, and that's probably just a result of that higher proof. Man, getting a little bit of a chocolate note on this one too. I think I'm picking up a little cherry here, which is actually really nice for a younger whiskey. Still getting like that iced tea, but this is like someone took the iced tea, like the mix, and dumped about 15 cups of mix in there before adding like 4 ounces of water. It's really rich. All right, let's go for a sip of this one, guys. Here we go. Man, so what really impressed me about the 111 was the mouthfeel on it, the oiliness that you get. I mean, again, this is non-chill filtered, barrel proof, but the mouthfeel on this and the way it just coats and paints the inside of the palate, it's really delicious. I love the caramel forwardness of this. You do get the honey. That burnt toast is still there. It's just a little bit more amped up here. Let's go for another sip. So it's interesting. To me, this is more of a medium toast, but just like drenched in caramel sauce. Topped with a little bit of honey on there too. It's just so like sweet and desserty. And I normally don't go for overly sweet whiskeys, but I think this with that malt just really does a really nice balance between the malt, the malt notes when you talk about that burnt toast, and then getting into your typical bourbon notes, which is, the caramels, vanillas, that honey note that's in there is just really powerful as well. Let's go for another sip. This is one of those whiskeys that the more you drink it, the sweeter it gets. It still holds on to that really beautiful finish. So the finishes are interesting for these two. The 91 it seems longer, but it's just a little bit more peppery. Whereas the 111 is not as peppery, but the flavors just last and last and last a lot longer on the 111 than the 91 proof. The 91 I think just seems longer because it's got that peppery spice to it on the back end and that malt and that burnt toast kick. The 111 just being so rich and so flavorful it just keeps going and going with that oiliness. One last sip. From sip to sip, you're getting the same experience. Yeah, it might get a little bit sweeter here and there, but for the most part, you're getting the sweetness up front. You're getting the mid palate, the explosion of that, like that marmalade, lemon zest, to go with that honey flavor. And then the back end on each sip from both of these just finishes with a really nice, long, peppery finish. I think it's a little bit more peppery on the 91, whereas the oiliness of the 111 really comes through and just gives you a nice, pleasing finish with some sweet flavors. So one thing I also want to mention on the back of the bottle, you guys saw it in the close-ups. They are super transparent about everything that goes into their bottles of whiskey. And you know, what more can you ask for from a craft distillery? So, like I said, if you guys are passing by Chattanooga Whiskey on the shelf, you're definitely missing out on some great craft whiskey. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this review as we took a deep dive and took a look at Chattanooga Whiskey and what they're bringing to everyone out there. It's really good stuff. It's very impressive. I cannot wait to see what this stuff and how it is as it gets older. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't, find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter. Let me know if you've had these before, what you think of them. I'm looking forward to trying more of this stuff as it becomes more available. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum. Take care, everybody.